How can you create the perfect silhouette?
How can you really get your teeth into things?
How cack-handed are you?
How can you make the perfect pentagon? Gareth?
I know this one, Fred. This is a geometry here. What you do is you take a compass, you draw a circle, and then without changing the radius, you score around the circumference.
Gareth, that's going to be a hexagon. It's going to have 6 sides. Wrong.
Fred, it's easy. A 50p piece, got the shape, take a pencil and start going round it like
Very good. Except all your sides are sloping and you've got 7 sides and that's a heptagon. No, I'll show you how to make a perfect pentagon, which has actually got 5 sides. A simple strip of paper. Try one yourselves while we're about it. Follow
dear.
Uncle Fred. A strip of paper and tie it in a simple knot.
Just an ordinary knot?
And then pull it gently together.
Right.
Okay. And then tear off the ends that are sticking out.
Right.
Yes.
And you are left with a near perfect paper pentagon.
Here. But how can you tell what's hot and what's not? The basic thermometer works because when you heat it up, the liquid expands and rises up the tube. However, there are slightly more interesting ways of telling the temperature. Now, here I have an egg floating, just about, but if I put that egg on the heat, then the water expands as it heats up, becomes less dense, and then at a particular temperature, sooner or later, that egg sinks. Had that egg been heavier, it would have sunk sooner. Had it been lighter, then later. And that's basically the principle behind the Galileo thermometer. Now, that's this rather wonderful looking object full of pretty coloured floats, each a different weight. And what happens is, when you turn on the heat and the temperature goes up, then the heaviest weight drifts downwards first at a particular temperature, followed by the next heaviest at a slightly higher temperature. And as we can see, this one is just getting to around about the middle, hovering there, and that's how we tell the temperature. So it's 18, and that's how we can tell what's hot and what's not.
How can you sail to Mars?
Don't be daft, you can't sail to Mars. You need a rocket or a spaceship.
Yeah, well, you would think so, but a long time ago, when we first considered flight in space, people thought that we might actually do it in a sailing boat like this.
Ridiculous.
Crazy idea, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, actually, no, because it is possible to travel in space using only the power of the sun.
Oh, yeah, I thoroughly approve of that. Very green. Would that be what? Solar panels?
Not solar panels, Shan, but let me explain. Imagine that this torch is the sun, okay? And when light comes streaming out of the sun at 300 million meters per second and hits on a sail, the impact that it makes with the sail is pretty wimpy, really. But there is a little push. So what you need to do is to multiply that push, and the best way to do that is to build a huge sail. And I have designed a prototype sun-sailing spacecraft. Here's the sun, and here's the Earth in its orbit around the sun, and here is the USS Dynage.
Hello.
Now, can you hoist the mainsail? It's parked in a solar orbit near Earth. And you can see that the sails are enormous, several kilometers wide, in fact, and they're made of a very thin, metal-coated plastic, which isn't even strong enough to support its own weight. And it doesn't have to be, because in space, it doesn't have any weight. The light comes streaming in from the sun, hits the sails, and gives it a push. And if the captain angles those sails carefully, it will speed up. As it speeds up, it falls out of its orbit and starts the journey towards Mars, which would take about a year or two, which isn't much slower than the time taken for a rocket to make that journey. And because it's not carrying any fuel, it can carry a lot more cargo. Now, this might seem like one of my daft ideas, but in fact, real scientists are already working on designs for real solar sailing spacecraft like this, which may make that journey sometime in the next few years. And that is how you could actually sail to Mars.
Right. How can you create the perfect silhouette? Sian, tell me please, who is that?
This is an easy one, Fred. Queen Victoria.
Absolutely right. I knew you wouldn't let me down. Gareth, slightly more difficult. Who is that?
Oh, it's one of the Spice Girls. No, it's Sherlock Holmes, isn't it?
Yes, elementary, my dear Watson. It is amazing what can be gleaned simply by looking at a black outline. Normally hand-drawn, but now they can be reproduced with photographic accuracy. I'll show you how, but I'll need someone for this silhouette with a perfect, noble, aristocratic sort of profile.
Thank you, Fred.
Sian, are you free?
Fred, of course I am.
Come with me. Right, Sian, I'm now going to create the perfect silhouette of you. Would you sit down, please?
Yes.
And in front of your subject, you need a sheet of glass to which you tack some tracing paper, like so. Behind the glass and behind your subject, you'll need a good, bright light. Thank you. And now you'll need one of these. It's called a spacer, and it goes between your subject's head and the screen. You'll not see it, of course, but it keeps their head absolutely motionless, which is what you want. You'll then need some charcoal, and you simply draw around the shape on the screen. So simple. It was named after Monsieur Silhouette, who was a French finance minister some 250 years ago. And he was particularly tight and frugal, so the French had a catchphrase, à la silhouette, which meant on the cheap. He was a great supporter of this form of art, probably because it was one of the cheapest sorts of art, and it became known as the silhouette. And then, I'll just put a bit of that in there, take it off, and let's see what we've got. What do you think, Sian?
That's not bad at all.
That says Sian to me. Thank you very much indeed. And what you'd do, obviously, then you'd either paint or charcoal in the shape of the head, or better still, cut the whole thing around on a sheet of black paper. And that way, you'd create the perfect silhouette.
Well, now, how cat-handed are you?
God, there's nobody in the world more cack-handed than him.
What are you talking about, Fred?
Of course, Gareth can't literally be cat-handed,
No?
because he's actually right-handed, aren't you?
That's right, yes, I am, yeah.
Now, only 10% of the population is actually left-handed, which means they're seen as different. Different people can be treated with suspicion. Throughout the centuries, in times gone by, left-handers were seen as evil. They were even burnt at the stake as witches or sorcerers. Hardly very fair.
No.
Words for left-handed have become insults, just like the cat-handed I was mentioning earlier. The word sinister literally means of the left, but we know it as evil. In fact, there are hundreds and hundreds of words for left-handed, and I can probably tell whether you're from the north, south, east or west according to the word you use. Hello there, so now for the very latest on the dialect front. Starting up in Scotland, where it's a case of high pressure building up, leading to a good scattering of Keirport and Gorkyport, not forgetting the odd heavy Corrie-fisted or two. Now we come further south, sinking ever southwards to the borders, in fact. Here it's cuddy-handed, Dollock-handedness, and we could see some cuddy-wifters floating around. Do watch out for these. Now it's sinking even further south. It's down as far south as the Midlands here, and we've a couple of verbal systems moving in from the west with a vengeance. They're leading to Spuddy, Squippy and Watty, and also a couple of K-fists. Meanwhile, let's concentrate on the west, and here it's very much a case of Keggy and Wacky holding firm, and likely to remain that way throughout the rest of the week. Further south, much of a muchness, in fact. In the southwest, a couple of heavy Kefty, Skiffles and Squiffies. do watch out for slippery roads as a result. Whereas down in the southeast here, it's scrooch, scooch and coochie, basically more of the same. The message as usual being, don't forget your dictionary. And indeed, there are probably more words for left-handed in our language than any other. So really, is it a case of people being rude about left-handers? Because, well, being right-handed is just ordinary.
Right, how can you really get your teeth into things?
Hey, can I have them back, please?
They're yours, I think.
Thank you very much.
You see, I think false teeth have been somewhat falsely maligned over the years, and I consider them to be important anthropological artifacts.
Well said.
And join me into the mouth of history as we chart the development of civilization.
A self-portrait.
False teeth.
It's a big blob.
See, without your teeth in, Fred, isn't it? Some of the first people to make false teeth were the Etruscans around about 700 BC, and in those days, wearing false teeth was a sign of real status. And in fact, the new teeth were attached to your rotten old stumps by a rather expensive gold band. Over the years, many materials have been used to make false teeth. George Washington's teeth were made out of wood, and in fact, many false teeth have been made out of either animal bone or, do you know what these are?
They look like real teeth to me.
That's exactly what they are, from dead people, and indeed from living people as well. The poor used to sell their teeth. By the 18th century, false teeth had become a sign of, I don't know, kind of a fashion statement, really, I suppose. Look at these. Elaborate sets of jewelled teeth were made, and if you didn't have any stumps to attach them to, what you do is have your gum pierced and dangle them like that.
Gareth, they're a bit like, look, my earrings.
They are. I prefer to think of them as gum rings, really. However, by Victorian times, we'd become a bit prudish about wearing false teeth, and the quest was to make the most realistic set possible. And a Frenchman called Fouchard came up with these, a top and bottom set, connected by a spring at the back. And that spring exerts pressure on the teeth, keeping them in your mouth. Well, that was the theory. But you see, the problem was...
Bugs Bunny.
What are you saying?
If you smile or you fell asleep or relaxed, the spring would fire them out of your mouth, so that wasn't very successful. But arguably the most unfortunate set of false teeth in history belongs to a gentleman called Arthur Dark in the 20s, who fell asleep with a cigarette in his mouth and his false teeth caught fire. He woke up a few minutes later to find his face full of smoke.
I bet that was the last time Arthur ever fell asleep in a fabulous house. But a serious warning there about the dangers of smoke.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
Fred. But these days, teeth are realistic, they stay in your mouth, and they're fireproof. So now that's how you can really get your teeth into things.
How did the ha-ha get its name?
Forgive my ignorance, Fred, but I don't know what ha-ha is.
You're not
I know.
Gareth.
It's something to do with gardens, isn't it?
Actually, you're close. It is, in fact, a feature of gardens. Gardens in very posh houses. Come with me to Dinage Towers. A ha-ha, in fact, is a gently sloping ditch. A sloping ditch with a wall at the back of it. And the idea is it stops animals like sheep and cattle from climbing onto your lovely, pristine lawns. At the same time, from the house itself, you get a beautiful, uninterrupted view of the countryside and the animals without needing a fence. But how did it get its name? Possibly because, as you stumbled upon it, you might say, ha-ha! Or the French who invented it might have said, ah-ah. That's one theory. I've got my own. Oh, bad luck, old bee.
I adore croquet. My go.
Can't you do that?
Afraid so, Gareth. Oh, dear, look. It's gone right down the
what a
field.
shame.
Someone's going to have to get the
Catch
ball.
me out.
Don't worry, Felicity. I'll get it.
What a good
Show me a moment.
There's always one, isn't there, old girl?
Very funny.
Well, that's how the ha-ha could have got its name, and that is...
Now for now.
Of that old boy.
For details of all the hows in this programme, don't forget to record the data burst coming up shortly. Then use your freeze frame to view each page. You can also visit the how-to site on the World Wide Web.